Tonight, our presentation is going to be taped by Kobe Mize in the back and streamed by David Hardy over here. So we've got two options for people who are not present to hear. So let's get started, and thank you very much for coming. Candidates will now have 3 minutes in which to introduce themselves and tell us why they're running for office.
And mayoral candidates go first, and I invite Chris Perret.
Good evening, all. Thank you all for coming. It's good to see people in the seats. I've lived in town since '82. I was at that business here since '92. People in town have asked me to be mayor again, so I put myself on the ballot. I have 2 kids that are both up at CSU. I have 1 torn that you don't know about, who we're dealing with a brain tumor right now. Thank you everybody for their support. He is doing really well. Everything's going as planned with the doctors. We had a meeting today with them, so all is good there. Thank you all for your support. I'm going to do this because of people asking, and also that town, I think, needs us to everybody to step up and do this maybe once, if not twice. 04 to 06 was when I was mayor last. I've had my business since '92, and I feel that we can make this town grow very well and be one big happy family again. And there's going to be tough roads to hoe, but I think we'll all be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is mayoral candidate Christopher Larson. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I want to start by thanking Hanson and Jeanette for all the work you guys did put into doing this tonight, organizing questions, and thank everyone else for coming out tonight on a snowy evening. My name is Christopher Larson. I have lived in Nederland for a little over 10 years now, but was born and raised in the area. I was born down in Boulder, raised down there, learned to ski at Eldora, learned to backcountry ski up at Rainbow Lakes. Been around for a while, and after college went away for graduate school, have moved around the country, lived East Coast, West Coast, in between, and every time I just keep coming back here because I love this place. This is the best town I've found in America. And when I came back in about 2005 from, unfortunately, Los Angeles, I decided I wanted to get involved because I've been talking about involvement and how scientists need to get more involved in our political process in our daily life. So I joined the Open Space Board up here, spent a couple of years on the Board of Trustees from about 06 to 08, and then got called away to DC where I worked on the Hill and learned really about the critical role of coalitions, of how really we need to come together. If you're going to get anything done, everyone needs to work together. And when I finally escaped from DC, and definitely mean escape, I came back here and decided to get back involved. I was on the Planning Commission. I take a very scientific view of things and wanted to learn how a town works, learn all the little pieces. So I've been on the Planning Commission, at the Board of Zoning Adjustments. I was a liaison to the DDA, the open space. I see all these coalitions work together, and now I want to take that to the next step. I've been on the Board of Trustees for the last 2 years. I want to take it to the next step and serve as mayor, because I want to be able to look back 2 years from now and see that I've helped leave this town in a better place than it is today, and rebuild the respect between members of the Board of Trustees amongst themselves, between them and the town staff, and them and the community at large. So that's pretty much why I'm running, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Now for trustee candidates, I would invite Topher Donahue.
Hello, my name is Topher Donahue, and I'll just start with my campaign promise. I'm going to build a wall between here and Boulder, and I'm going to get Boulder to pay for it. No, not really, but I had to start with that. No, in all seriousness, though, I lived in Nederland for 13, 14 years, and I grew up over by Allen's Park. I love when people ask me how long I lived here, because I tell them, well, with my kids, it'll be 5 generations. So I've been in this area my whole life. I moved into Nederland. When I moved to Nederland, I moved into town, whereas I think a lot of people, when they move to Nederland, they're moving out, away from town, away from the city. so I think I bring a little different perspective, but also a very local perspective to the community. And I've learned a lot. I've been on the board for the last couple of years, and I feel like I'm doing this again partly because I think I just learned enough to now be able to contribute at a little more productive, in a more productive way than I was able to the first couple of years. And I learned a lot. I have 9-year-old twins, and as a result, I'm very much a fan of the schools here and want to continue to help them and support them. I guess the thing that I like most about Nederland is its diversity. It's an easy place to live, and I think that I want to keep the town that way as much as I possibly can. While being on the board, I've learned there's a lot of different opinions. It's great to see all of you here, but I wish there was a lot more people here. I think there's a lot more opinions in this town than there are people in this room. And so one of the tricky roles we play on the board is to balance all these different opinions and the different opportunities and try to come up with good decisions. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you'll vote for me, but I really would like to see you vote for the people who are best for this job. So make sure you vote and tell your friends to vote, and I think that's probably the most important thing. Thank you.
The next candidate is Dallas Masters.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, now it works. I'm Dallas Masters. In '98, I moved to Boulder to start graduate school in aerospace engineering. 2 years later, I made the best decision of my life, and I married a French woman. Her name is Laurence, and a lot of people probably know her because she's pretty active in the community as well. And in 2004, she said, you know, we're going to start a family. Let's look around for places to live. And she said, I really like Nederland. It's got a little bit of everything we'd like, you know, amenities, the mountains, schools, nice people. And so we came up here in 2004, and we immediately got involved in the community. I was recruited to help build the ice rink and tennis courts by Tim Murphy, my neighbor, and got really involved in that. A couple years later after that, I decided to run for the Board of Trustees, and I was on the Board of Trustees for a couple of years. While on the Board of Trustees, I was chair of the PROSAB committee, Parks and Open Space Committee, where we worked on trails, boating, and forest health as many of the issues. At the same time, I created the Sustainability Advisory Board during that tenure on the BOT. And in 2010, we had the opportunity to move to France for a year. So I actually left for a year, and we didn't like France. We liked Nederland better. So we came back. And we had sold everything, including our house, and came back and restarted our life in Nederland because we really were part of this community. And I have 2 kids, one in the middle school for the first time this year and one at the elementary school. And when I came back, I decided that I wanted to focus my efforts in terms of the community in the schools. And so I started working with the PTA at the elementary school, and I was a president for the last 2 years, and I stepped off this year, and now the new president, Jennifer Bonert, has taken over. But I'm still very actively involved in the PTA. I think supporting our schools is one of the most important things in this community. Without our schools, if they continue to shrink or if they were to close our schools, I think Nederland would probably die as a community. I think that if you vote for me to become a trustee, that would be one of the things that I'd like to pursue, is maybe a new committee that focuses on schools, that bridges the gap between the town and the schools. But I think that our current situation in town is good. When I ran for the Board of Trustees in 2008, we actually were not in good financial health. The town looks much better these days, but I think that we need to continue that. But one of the things that I think that has dropped off in the last few years is our public works. And our streets and our drainage issues are the worst I've ever seen them. So that's one thing that I would probably focus on if you elect me a trustee. I think all of us here on the stage are excellent candidates for trustee. I think rebuilding the trust between town staff and the Board of Trustees would be easy with this group of people. And so I thank you for coming out. I wish there were more people in the audience tonight, and I appreciate your support.
Next up is Julie Gustafson.
Good evening. I'm Julie Gustafson, and apparently I'm the only person who needs notes to remember that. First, I want to thank Jeanette and Hanson for all the work that they put into hosting this forum so that we could all come together as a community at a time I think it's really important to be together as a community. And so you guys can learn about me as a candidate as well as the other candidates here tonight. So thank you all for being here. The short version of me, I am an educator, I'm an advocate, I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm a conservationist. And I really love living in Nederland. I like all different things about it. I like backcountry pizza and wild bear, the carousel, and what I like most is how it all fits together and feels like a great place to be raising our children. I like that we don't look like every other town. I like that we have people with an entrepreneurial spirit who are creative and successful and managing local businesses, meeting the needs of the community, and inviting in tourists as well. I like that the character of town and the people of town are very strong and independent. And I like even more that they are so quick to come together to support another community member in need. And I think that really makes us unique. Of course, I like the special events and the music, and maybe something that interweaves with all of it is how much I love to spend time outdoors with my family and friends, connecting to nature. I moved to Nederland just over 11 years ago, and my husband and I bought our house in Big Springs 10 years ago, almost. Something that we realized would be much harder to do today if we were moving to town. I currently work for Boulder Valley School District at the Middle Senior High School as campus monitor. I'm incredibly popular with the children in town. Might be good they can't vote. While it's a tough job, one of the things I've gained from it is a thicker skin. And I do think having that thicker skin would help me to be effective on the Board of Trustees. Because I understand that I can't always make everyone happy all the time. And I'm willing to put myself out there and try to make the best decisions for town based on the opinions of town, but with no assurance that everybody's going to love me all the time. On a more serious note, working at the school and getting to know the kids is one of the reasons I'm running for the Board of Trustees, as well as being inspired by my own children and wanting to make sure this town lives up to their needs. Prior to working at the school, I worked in environmental education. I worked for National Wildlife Federation for almost 10 years to advance environmental education in the state and to advance policies that connect kids and families to nature. I also worked with Western Resource Advocates, Sierra Club, and a few other environmental groups. And I share that with you because I want you to understand that what has always driven me is the importance of making a difference where I live, and that's what I hope to do. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Jean Smith.
I'd like to thank you all for being here. I do wish I did take notes because I'm not a very good public speaker. I worked retail sales here in Boulder for 36 years at McGuckin Hardware. I may have met many of you at that store during this time. As a resident of this town for 35 years, I've seen a lot of good, a lot of bad. But I do feel it's not my time, and I'd like to be involved in my community. I love this town. My goal is infrastructure. I think we are really behind in our streets, maintenance, drainage. Parking is a big issue, especially when we have our events, and that is something I'd like to be more involved with. I'll leave it at that, and thank you kindly for your time.
Now Stephanie Mule.
I, like Julie, also brought notes to remember who I am. And I thank you all for coming out tonight and just for being part of this great group of candidates. I am a married mother of 2 children. My husband, Jeff, most of you, or many of you may know him. He's the principal of Nederland Elementary School. We have 2 children who are 9, and my daughter who's turning 7 today, actually. Who attend Nederland Elementary. We've lived here 5 years, and really getting here for us, coming to Colorado was very intentional. Getting to Ned was just a stroke of good luck. In fact, I had never been here when we moved. My husband got the job. We thought it looked like a wonderful place to live and a great adventure, and we figured we better do that while we still felt like we had some adventure in us. We didn't want to get in the dirt. Or think we were getting old faster. So we've lived here 5 years, and we also, we moved predominantly so that we could get sunshine, snow, better schools, a more active lifestyle, and an improved quality of life and sense of community. So I'm running for town council because I really enjoy the people in the town of Nederland. I really enjoy living here, and our family's committed to making a positive contribution here in town. I feel like my background, I'm an environmental planner, and so I have spent the last 20 years doing work in transportation, land use planning, and natural resource management and public involvement. I also feel that the connection with the school is an important one in terms of some things that are coming up in the future here in the town with both keeping our schools healthy and where things go here with the bond. So in my work as an environmental consultant, I'm a project manager. I've worked on projects mostly in Oregon and Washington, but I have more recently been working on projects from New Mexico. And really what I've done is I've been the consultant that towns like Nederland and federal and county governments end up hiring to work on various public works projects. So I've mostly done road projects and energy projects. Large projects, one of the largest projects currently underway on the West Coast, to smaller downtown redevelopment projects, and a flood project actually down in a very remote part of New Mexico. So in short, I'm running because I feel that my experience working with the public to deliver projects that build community and infrastructure, something that's relevant to our town and might be useful. And in particular, I feel our current town needs are related to providing more affordable housing and improving our existing infrastructure, namely roads and drainage. So with that, I'll step away.
Thank you. Since candidate Roger Cornell could not be here, he asked that his profile be read from the recent Mountaineer article. So Linda Glasser is going to come up and read Roger Cornell's statement.
The last time I stood on this stage, I received my high school diploma. Many moons ago. I'm reading this for Roger. Roger Cornell is a Nederland resident and retired University of Colorado employee who has been active in Nederland town government for 30 years. If elected as a trustee, Cornell's top 3 priorities would be: 1, to work with newly elected board and restore a good working relationship with the town staff. 2, to work with the Nederland Police Department to implement a plan for community involvement for the level of police enforcement. And 3, to work with the Planning Commission on planning and zoning to increase our workforce housing in town. Cornell says the need for affordable housing is a major issue, especially for young families. Regarding the town's Vision 2020, Cornell feels that there is no part of the statement that is more important than others. It is the foundation that links all our efforts. The environment, our schools, our businesses, our utilities, and our families and homes all need to be supported together. Cornell has lived up on the hill on the north side of Nederland since 1980 and moved to Colorado from Philadelphia. He attended high school and served in the U.S. Army. Cornell retired after 30 years at CU in Boulder as a maintenance supervisor. Cornell has been married to his wife Karen for 45 years, and they have raised 2 daughters, both of whom went through the Netherlands school system. Cornell says, "We have enjoyed every moment of life here in Nederland." Cornell has been active in town government since 1986. He served for 12 years as a trustee and for 25 years on the Planning Commission. He also served on the Community Center Board. The town has a very strong plan in place with a recycling and compost program, and each department has a sustainability plan. Cornell wrote, "I would like to see us get a hazardous waste program here so we can drop off items such as electronics and batteries. We should continue working with the county to increase these programs. I would especially work on protecting the area along the Middle Boulder Creek and the other areas on the west side of town. The board can help meet the needs of families by working with the schools. The town has an accessory role to play with the schools, but we should support all of the school programs and the teen center. One of the biggest things the town can do is helping to create more affordable workforce housing. Cornell would give the town's infrastructure needs the highest priority. Having the knowledge and background and understanding of the town's utility systems is one of the most important roles of the trustee. We should encourage and support all businesses, Cornell says, but give a priority to businesses that would cater to the needs of the full-time family residents so that we don't need to have to travel down the hill for basic services. The community needs to continue discussing marijuana as a part of economic development to find the right fit for Nederland. I believe the marijuana business belongs in a commercial zoning district and not in residential areas. I also think that we need a discussion on the number of retail outlets we will permit in town. I have always supported events in Nederland. The only issue that needs more community input is when there is a conflict caused by long hours or noise at an event. Sometimes it is a balancing act to try to respond to everybody's concerns, according to Cornell. Regarding the interaction with the police department, Cornell wrote that the town marshal has spent more than a year surveying the community for input on what and how residents want the police to respond. The new board will need to work in a constructive way with the marshal to make a policy that the community can support and that will give everyone the guidelines needed for the police department to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We're now going to have a question for each of the mayoral candidates. The candidate will have 4 minutes to respond, and then his opponent will have 4 minutes to answer the question, and then his opponent will have 2 minutes to respond if he chooses to. Response is entirely voluntary and can be passed.
Chris Parade, please come to the lectern. And your question is, what do you see as the most crucial zoning issues in Nederland?
Give me the second question first.
Okay, we'll give you the first question
No
first.
worries, no worries, we can do the second question.
Okay.
All right, for that, I think what we need in town is we have very good areas for housing and families and things like that. The thing that we need more of is a space in town where you can have industry, because we have the only area that's in town that we can have industry is where Little Bear is over here, and High Country Excavating is the only part of town left. We need to have a larger area in town for industry, so light industries like cabinet makers and things like that, and also the marijuana industry in addition would have a place that they could be able to have their product made and things like that. What we also need is areas so that we don't have to go to Boulder for like getting your let's say appliances fixed or something like that. Have a local company here in town which would be able to have their office in this industrial area. We have too much now going on that we need a space in town for low-income housing. We have a space now whereas over in the trailer area where the now Public Works has their garage, that area there has already been planned out with Boulder County for some low-income housing. We need that in this area badly so that local teachers and people that work up at the schools will be able to live here in town, not have to come up from down below. That's what I feel, and also we have a bunch of retail outlets already in town. We can keep that in the CBD section, but we need to also, everybody in town needs to buy into the factor that we want to have family housing in town so families can move here, and we also need to be able to have a place for light industry. Thank you.
Chris, you have 2 minutes to respond if you choose to.
Thank you. This is a whole new thing, and this rebuttal thing. I like this. I totally agree with Chris on that we need a light industrial base, some kind of manufacturing. I always look to Steamboat Springs as a great example of this, where they have moot cycles, which is a perfect type of industry that would fit within Nederland. High-end custom frames, titanium frames, good bike stuff, but we do need a place for it. We do have one additional industrial zoned area in town, which is the Wolf Tongue Mine. We've got 7 acres there that could be turned into something really special and a great spot if we come up with the right partnerships with private development to make it happen. I don't quite know how that will occur. I mean, the property's obviously been underutilized for years, but we do have some opportunities in town for this kind of light manufacturing, industrial use that will diversify our economic base and diversify the job opportunities up here so that maybe we don't have so many people have to go drive down the canyon every day or take the bus down the canyon every day to go to work. And second issue with the zoning that I think is very important that we should look at is related to the affordable housing issue. Obviously, we have an issue. Chris mentioned the planned development over at the town shop. It's a big reason why I'm supporting construction of the town shop, is we've talked about having affordable housing there for a long time, and it's just a small step in the right direction. But we should also look at additional zoning options, perhaps cabin zoning, mother-in-law zoning, some more creative zoning options to increase the density, the infill density in town, so that we can increase the affordable housing within the boundaries of Nederland and provide what we really need to keep people living here. Thank you very much.
Actually, Chris, you can stay up there because you can
Right up next, all right.
And I apologize, Ms. Bray, if anyone was planning on the order of your questions, you each got 2 of them. We've got them all mixed up here, so you can each be surprised.
Fortunately, I was just saying I can't remember which order mine were, so
Well,
I'm surprised.
your question, sir, is what do you think about the bag fee ordinance?
Yeah, thank you. I was actually really excited to get this question because on the Board of Trustees for the last couple of years, we spent 6 months to a year talking about the bag ordinance and the idea of trying to encourage not using single-use disposable bags. I think it's a clear example of how sometimes the goal we set as a government, as legislators, as members of the trustees, gets lost in the process. And in this case, the goal was right. The goal was clear that we wanted to eliminate the use of plastic bags and paper bags, these single-use disposable bags from town. We all know they're a bad thing. We all know, we've all seen them blowing around down by the res. We'd like to get rid of them. What happened was we lost track of that goal and ended up kind of copying what Boulder did. We copied what other cities did because it's kind of the easy thing to do. We said, well, other towns have seen great success in charging a fee for each bag you use, and then that reduces the use of those bags in town. Unfortunately, we're a special case, and in many cases, Nederland is special. We're not like Boulder. We're not like Boulder where they've got 100 stores using disposable bags. We have 2. What we should have been doing was working with our 2 main companies, our 2 businesses, the hardware store and the grocery store, that actually have disposable bags, work with them to find a creative way to voluntarily remove the bags from circulation. We could have done something really special and been one of the first cities in the country to get rid of them entirely. Not even an option. I don't care if you pay 10 cents or 25 cents for the bag. You show up and you don't have a disposable or a reusable bag, you have to find another way. But unfortunately, it got lost in the process, and we ended up going with the 10-cent fee. It's one of those. It was one of those lessons I've learned every time I've been on the Board of Trustees. I've learned a lesson about how to make government work and how to be more effective. And this was one of the big ones for this year. And it was one of the big reasons I ended up voting against the bag fee, because I thought we could do better. Nederland doesn't have to just always copy what the bigger cities do because there's precedent. We could have worked and built coalitions with the government, with our businesses, and worked out a way over the next year, 2 years, 3 years to completely phase out disposable bags instead of just legislating this fee to force people not to. So I'd very much like to look at ways in the future, take the bag ordinance or the bag fee as an example of how we can do better. And in the future, before just taking verbatim legislation from Boulder, let's look at it and say, how can we do it better? How can we do it the Nederland way? Thank you.
Chris, do you care to respond?
Sorry, let it
Chris with the K.
Chris.
Yeah, the bag fee it would have been a lot better to go with the stores and everything like that, get their input totally in on it to begin with, and encourage people just to get the reusable bags and be able to use them. The hardest thing is like you leave them in your car, you brought them inside, you left them in your dining room. You know, that's what happens with them at my house. But now I have them down at the shop, I have them in the car, and I have them in the kids' car so that when they go pick up something, they have a bag as well. But we need to be able to work with the businesses in town. This is an issue that, yes, we do have to be more environmentally conscious, but I think it's an education of everybody, the businesses as well as the people.
Thank you. Can everyone in the audience hear all right? In the back, can you wave if you can hear well? Thank you. Just wanted to double check. The trustee candidates are now going to answer their questions, their first questions. They will have 4 minutes also to answer, and they will have 2 minutes to respond by a show of hands. And we'll choose them based on the order that they were given, the numbers order that they have from the beginning. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. That was you were supposed to say that. If no response is offered, then we will go on to the next answer.
Tover, please come to the lectern. And your question is, residents responded to a recent poll saying that downtown Nederland is looking, quote, tired and run down. Do you agree with this? And if so, what are your ideas for getting through the roadblocks towards revitalization?
Well, I would say I agree. I've been driving through Netherlands since before I could drive. And, well, not literally, but I do think that's true. I think it's one of those things. It's a blessing and a curse. I think it keeps a lot of people from moving here, which a lot of us like. I think it prevents a lot of people from moving here that we would like to have here. And I think it reduces a little bit of the pride we may otherwise have in our town. So the ideas for getting through the roadblocks, I think the very first thing is really critical, and it's happening right now, and that is that we need to pass the DDA debt authorization in this coming election. I'd like to just clarify that this authorization is not a blank check for the DDA to do whatever they want with a whole bunch of money. It's going to go through the same process as any of our expenditures do. That has to be approved in a step-by-step way. It just allows them to start that process, and that each step will involve community feedback. Secondly, in the kind of bigger picture, I think we need a common sense approach to decision making so that all the different parts, the community feedback, the expert opinion, and all the quickly changing world can be considered and result in good decisions. The last 2 big projects we've done since I've been involved in any way was NedPeds and the town shop, and it took so long to put them through our system that by the time they went to bid, it cost twice as much as they initially had planned. So we have a challenge of the speed of change being a little bit faster than our town processes. So we need a smooth operating system, and I'm hoping I can help with that if I get back on the board for this next round. I think a proactive approach to change would be good. We need to make changes here to keep town functional. And here's my point on that, is that if we don't do it now, then what will happen is we'll be forced to do it later. The town shop is a pretty good example of that. Our old shop got so bad that we got desperate, and as a result, the project it's good, but it's probably not what we would have liked it to be ideally. If we can do it proactively, then we get a lot more options than if we're forced into change. I think another thing we can do is to help with the downtown is to utilize the current town staff. They have an awesome record of winning grants to be able to split costs of development with state and federal funds. So we need to take advantage of that. And finally, I think in this community where everyone cares a lot, we need to communicate with the residents at every opportunity to minimize misunderstandings and make sure everyone knows as much as they want to know for what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the candidates wish to offer a response? Okay. Thank you.
Dallas, please come to the lectern. Your question is, we are losing enrollment in our elementary and middle high schools. What would you do to attract and keep families with kids to Nederland and show support for our local schools?
Excuse me. This is something that this question is perfect for me, because like I said in my introduction, when I came back to Nederland, I decided that the schools were an important thing for me to get involved in, and so I've seen firsthand how hard it is for the schools to operate on decreasing budgets, and I've seen the fact that we really need strong volunteer efforts on the PTA and inside the schools as parents and as senior citizens coming in to volunteer. And I do honestly believe that if our schools were to fail, then Nederland itself would fail. And so we, as a board of trustees, must look at the town and through the lens of keeping those schools healthy, and that means attracting families to town. That means making zoning decisions for housing that actually is attractive to families and not attractive to just potentially doing business inside of your house, as we recently had before the board of trustees. It also means making sure that affordable housing is being met in the town, and that's a tough issue. That's not one that's hard to legislate. It's one that you have to work with Boulder County with. It's ones that you have to look at new and creative ideas. We have homeowners associations that require a certain square footage for houses, and the neighbors who have built a big house in that particular area don't want to see a small house being built. But that's actually one of the solutions to affordable housing, is building smaller houses, and creating higher density is one of the other candidates spoke about. We should also be encouraging infill development before we start going outside of town limits. Probably many people know that we have an agreement with Boulder County that we won't grow outside of our current town limits. I'm not saying that we shouldn't grow in the future, but we should focus on infill at the current time, and also look at potentially some of the other developments that are coming down from Kayla Evans to build a community near her property that would be affordable housing for families. Like I said earlier, I think that the Board of Trustees should potentially create a committee that deals with school issues and starts to communicate more with the schools. We currently don't do that. And once a year, potentially, if we even do that once a year, there's a meeting between the principals and the Board of Trustees. And I think that we need to improve that so that the schools have more say in things that are going on. Also, as Board of Trustees, we have the power over discretionary funds that could be used for nonprofits that go toward, and those funds should go towards services for families first, not for things that potentially are just for some small economic benefit that may last for a weekend. We should be supporting nonprofits like the Food Pantry, the PTA. $5,000, if we're going to give it out as Board of Trustees, goes a long way at either school. If we give $5,000 out as trustees, the middle school and high school could do amazing things with that money. And currently, we don't do that. We don't really give out money to the schools. That's something I think that, as a Board of Trustees, I would advocate for. If you came to us and asked us for discretionary funds, I think the schools and the food pantry, the clothing closet, and the senior citizen services would probably be at the top of my list. And finally, I think that we need to encourage everybody to actually volunteer in town. It's one of the things that I think that's incredible about our town, and it's what makes our town thrive. We sit here every Friday night in the Backdoor Theater and have a great experience because of the volunteer effort led by Kayla and a bunch of other volunteers for the Backdoor Theater. And it's extremely special. And we have that all over town. The ice rink and the tennis courts. The other nonprofits I just mentioned. Carousel of Happiness, Wild Bear. You name them, we've got them. But people need to step up and volunteer, and I think that we need to encourage that in the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Any response? Oh, thank you.
Julie, your question is, Nederland is steadily becoming a higher cost community. It is no longer as welcoming to people of relatively meager means. What steps can the board take to maintain economic diversity in the community?
The more thought I gave to the importance of economic diversity in the community, the more important it became and the bigger this question became for me. I do want to say first, and maybe foremost, that I agree preserving that socioeconomic diversity is really important to this town. And I think for me, living here, that's because it is the most significant cultural diversity the town offers. And the lessons that students and adults alike learn from living in a diverse population include patience, tolerance, understanding, acceptance, and even being better able to address big problems by looking at potential solutions through different lenses. And so I feel like that lens for diversity is very important as we move forward as a community. And so the board does have to look at what they can do. And I try to think about the board's role as being leaders in the community that set policy. And what does that mean relative to the problems or the community becoming exclusionary to not only low income, but also middle income families and people just starting out, or maybe single professionals. And I thought, as leaders in the community, there's a number of things we could do, but probably the most important would be to recognize the hard work of so many volunteers that are already involved in the community. You have the Sustainability Advisory Board that is tackling this issue and bringing a lens to the issue and advancing solutions. You have the DDA, who is looking through their master plan at improving infrastructure for businesses in our downtown district. But within that, they're also looking at how do you provide workforce housing, and do we have an opportunity to have retail on the bottom level and housing on the top level. And that's important because it provides not only the possibility for workforce housing or affordable housing, but increased housing in general. We do have a shortage of housing for the different needs of people coming into the community. And maybe the biggest role is coming from the Planning Commission and the work that they're doing. They tackled this starting in 2015, and I know it's their highest priority moving into 2016. And they're going to be identifying policy solutions that are specific and that the board can move on quickly. And I think that the board will have to commit to doing that when they are seated. But I want to make sure we recognize all that work that's being done by those folks and the expertise that they bring. I also think as leaders in the community, the board needs to step up their role with working with Boulder County. And that happens on two fronts. Boulder County has a number of existing resources to help low and middle income families find and keep affordable housing in the county. This includes financial counseling when you're buying a home. It includes grant funding for down payments. It includes low interest loans and so forth. I'm not sure that our community, there's dedicated outreach for our community and that people know about these resources. So we really need to step up and put pressure on the county to come and do that education and outreach here regularly and often. We also need to talk to them about the programs they have that support our families in need. For example, right now, if you're a family that needs housing in Boulder County and you're in line for it, and it becomes available in Longmont, you are expected to move from Nederland to Longmont or move to the back of the line. And I think that that hurts our community as a whole because we lose people and we lose families who are invested in our community. And I think it also hurts families from Longmont who might be placed up in Nederland. So we need those programs tweaked to really meet the needs of our own residents. And those would be my primary focuses, I think, as a member of the board, looking at meeting the needs of low and middle income families and making sure they can stay here in Nederland.
Thank you. Do we have any response? If you guys aren't going to start responding, I'm not going to stop asking.
I just want to say, I'm Dallas, but this is Dallas, just for people that happen to be listening at home. But anyway, I'll say something, and it's in support of the same thing that Julie was talking about. That when I was a PTA president, I saw firsthand how much economic diversity there is in the community, and it's surprising. You know, at least 35% of the students, when we do field trips or winter adventure days, require financial help. And the only way we get that done in this community is by people stepping up and actually donating extra funds to the PTA or through some other nonprofit to support those families. And it also was illuminating as well to be PTA president and see friends of mine who I know had free time not volunteer when there was an obvious need for volunteers in the community. And so I think it's important for us to always keep pushing on ourselves and each other to volunteer, to join those volunteer efforts. It's an rewarding experience, and the needs are there. In both schools, at least 35% of the kids require financial help. Thanks.
G, please come to the lectern. Your question is, do you plan as a member of the BOT to take a stand when it comes to shooting areas on land surrounding Nederland?
Well, this is something I did take notes on, and absolutely I'm against a shooting area 35 years of listening bang, bang, bang on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, it gets old. And I realize that the shooting area is outside of town limit, but we should utilize all the resources possible to see to it it's not near our town. The former site that was used for shooting, really, how much lead is in the ground there? We speak of pollution, that polluting the groundwater. No one's really ever cleaned that up. And hygienic facilities, how do you keep hikers and bicyclists from straying into these areas, or this area that the Forest Service dedicates? I'm totally against it, and I believe the town should use every avenue possible to prevent it from being nearby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any response? So
just to build a little bit on what Jean said, I tend to look at a lot of things through the lens of land uses, and it's hard for me personally, I think, not to look at the issue of the shooting range in relationship to land uses. And while I haven't looked at the issue all that closely, what I do understand is that a lot of the folks using the facility, interested in the facility, are not really from here. They're coming up from down below to do that. And I would certainly be supportive and would want to encourage and ask questions about why that's not being pursued, and perhaps areas that might be better suited both in terms of transportation and limiting trips, but also in terms of land uses, industrial land uses, places where there's less people, animals, migration routes, etc. I'll leave it.
thank you.
You can stay up here because the next one is yours.
Well, that's
Okay. As has been mentioned before, Nederland is facing a severe housing crisis. How can the Board of Trustees address this for current residents and newcomers as well?
So we've heard a lot about housing, and I think we all recognize, or many people recognize, that this is a really important issue for our town. And I think there's a lot of really good work that has gone into laying the foundation and really describing what the need is, what the demographics are, what supply and demand is, and what some of the demographic trends are sort of influencing this housing issue within our community. So I want to spend a small amount of time just talking about what some of that housing study revealed. First of all, a third of our renters are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. That's a big deal. That's a huge part of people's revenue, what's coming in. And about a third of our rentals were built prior to 1970. This means that about half of our rentals are considered poor, of fair quality, and about a quarter of them are poor quality. So not only do we have limited rental housing and limited housing in general, but the quality of that rental pool is deteriorating over time. In short, I think it's fair to say we all know that homes under the $400,000 range are really hard to find. There are just few available options for current and future residents, forcing people into housing that they don't want and in some cases can't afford. I can't tell you how fortunate we feel. You talk about lucky. When we moved here, we had 20 days to make the move. Our kids were 2 and 4. And we really felt it was critical that we do it as a family. By some miracle, we found a house and moved here in 20 days. And now I really realize what a miracle that really was. Even more to the point, we were lucky enough, it took us 2 years to find a house to buy that was in our price range. And when we did find that house, talk about being lucky, it couldn't have been in a better location for us. But again, you know, we were one of the lucky ones. So some of the demographic trends are we have an increasing aging population, which is good, but it does influence some of the housing that we need. But we're losing our younger residents, and we are losing a lot of the folks who are actually in my demographic, 35 to 44. We also really have limited housing and are having a lesser share of folks in the middle income range. And I think that's a big deal for us as a community, is that we're losing some of that diversity that we've had. So in terms of what is our demand, the demand is that we have 60 new housing units by 2018. That's what the study found. That is 2 years away. And while I would love to jump in and be optimistic and say, let's get to it, the reality is we all know that having that many units of housing available in less than 2 years is probably something that we're not going to be able to do. For houses themselves, 49 new units by 2018. So there is a huge pent-up demand up there that really does deserve our attention. In terms of the type of housing that it's needed, it's really in that $300,000 and lower range. That's really what people can find. And if you're looking for that, it gets snatched up really quick. So what are some of the strategies? We need to be selective. We have 49 sites in town that are available for development. We need to be thoughtful in how those get developed and what goes on them. We need to be sustainable. We need to think about how we're going to develop our properties in a manner that is sustainable. We need to be creative. We need to think about how we're going to work with our land use code, how we're going to partner with Boulder's affordable housing unit. We need to be affordable with our housing. We need to be flexible in terms of, do we need modifications to our land use code to make this work? And finally, we need to be transparent. We know that this is probably, I know that this is probably an issue that some people want development and others do not. Anything that happens in regard to this conversation needs to be very public and something that people have opportunity to be involved with. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any response? Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back for the second question for each candidate. The second section will work very much like the first one did. See you in 10 minutes.